Yo people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video where I chat into this camera lens about Chelsea. Now listen, West Ham, we're gonna talk about the squad. We're gonna talk about if there is deceiving depth or if we do have the right profiles and the right balance going forward, and if we need to sort things out in January just to keep this team ticking over if we're going to continue to be in this very highly contested and difficult title race. Now, to add some perspective and a little bit of calm, we did play West Ham. West Ham are the fourth best team in the league. They beat Manchester City in the Cup. They beat Liverpool at home as well this season. They are a very good team. You can lose to West Ham even with your best players available, who are not carrying knocks and who are not, recovering and coming back. And it's no surprise to me that Jorginho, James, Lukaku, the three players that Tuchel confirmed said, that Lukaku isn't really ready to start and he needs to be patient. He dropped a pretty big stinker when he came on. He was anonymous, no surprise. Jorginho, who was carrying a hip injury, Tuchel also confirmed he's been carrying something last few games. Again, no depth in the sixth position. We're going to get to that in a minute. The DM position, he drops a little bit of a howler as well. No surprise, Reece James, a little bit quiet for his usual standards. He was also just coming back from something. The point being is that, when players are coming back from a knock, we should expect performance to dip a little bit. And it's no surprise, really, the outpour on social media has mainly been for Jorginho and Lukaku in terms of sweeping statements. Lukaku is a bust. Lukaku is finished. Lukaku is this. Lukaku is that. He has not started the game for more and way over a month now. He is only just coming back from injury, so a little bit of caution and patience on that one in terms of him and his movements and him being fully fit and actually contributing to the team as he should and creating chances for himself and getting into dangerous positions. And Jorginho, listen, again, another player that has been overused. Similarly to, the Euros, Mason Mount, Chilwell, they were rotated at the start of the season. Their form was potentially not at its best. Alonso started at left wing back. Mason Mount, was rotated in and out of the team. A lot of fatigue there. He's only just starting to come to the fore maybe now in the last couple of games. Look, again, England got to the final. A little bit of fatigue. We've spoken about it before. Mason Mount's played a lot of games this year. Jorginho, the same applies. He's played a lot of games this year. Got to the final with Italy. But the only difference is for us is that in that sixth position, in that DM position, there is no cover. The lack of balance in midfield is a big problem for Chelsea. Now, Scott McTominay, the scout, is what I'm going to call him at our club. He chose Saul and Gosens over Tchouemani. That was the report from Matt Law. That was something that he decided. That was one of our main transfer targets along with the striker. And reportedly, Tuchel also wanted a wing back. We got Lukaku. Erling Haaland was another transfer target that was far too difficult to do. Of course, Raiola, agent fees, wages, all of these things potentially blowing Chelsea's structure out of the water. That's understandable. One of the most difficult deals to do in football. You can't get it done. Fair enough. You go and get Lukaku, job done there. If you want a striker, conversion rate. Again, we can talk about in another time Chelsea's, scouting strategy, the way that they recruit. Do they actually look at players that fit a system, fit the style of play that we're trying to play, or do they just pick up players that have got a lot of goals and assists in another league who maybe need a lot of adaptation to our team to actually work? Timo Werner is a good example of that, someone that obviously took advantage of a lot of space in the Bundesliga, and then we expect him at Chelsea with a lot less space against low blocks to suddenly do the same thing. It's an unrealistic expectation, and that's not even mentioning that we played him out of position as soon as we signed him under Lampard at left wing. So, and at lone striker. So, these are the question marks in terms of long-term Chelsea's recruitment over the last couple of years. Is it on the same level as Liverpool, who have less funds? Probably not in terms of hit ratio, in terms of taking dubs and W's in signing players and not screwing up. And Manchester City, you could probably say the same thing. Their recruitment the last couple of years has been spot on. Chelsea's is looking very iffy at the moment, and a lot of questions need to be asked in the scouting department on recruiting of players. And maybe not just going for, like I said, the GA guys, and maybe looking at system and who fits what in terms of formation, in terms of style of play, in terms of the Premier League as well. But we'll get onto that in a minute. Saul Niguez was signed as the six per Matt Law over Tchouemani, and it could prove costly. Saul was not settled in. He hasn't been that deputy for Jorginho. Was he even the sitting midfielder in the first place? Probably not. We know Kova is more box-to-box. Loftus-Cheek is more box-to-box. Kante is more box-to-box. Mason Mount in a three-man midfield is box-to-box. Gallagher, even if he was still here, box-to-box. Do we have balance in midfield? Do we have a six? Do we have someone to take Jorginho out, like I said, and give him that rest and recovery when he needs it, instead of what we saw against West Ham, playing with potentially a knock and having a howler. This is something we have to look at. Right now, it's looking like a massive blunder that we need to repair and sort out in January, is the fact that we do not have a serious cover for Jorginho in Saul and Gosens, who hasn't adapted like Scott may have thought he would. Tchouemani a year early, apparently too soon. Looks like he may have got it wrong. Saul hasn't adapted. He hasn't been able to get to the tempo. He hasn't been able to anticipate his surroundings in the Premier League, in England in particular. And whenever someone has played next to Saul in a Premier League game from the start, whether it be Loftus-Cheek or Kova against Aston Villa, their own performance has dropped off massively. And Chelsea's title, credentials and Champions League hopes may pin on actually just accepting defeat and admitting defeat and admitting you got it wrong and rectifying that in January, and either sending him back and bringing in someone else, or recalling a loanee, maybe a Gilmour, someone who at least is in tune with the tempo of this league to give us a better standing chance when we do take Jorginho out of the team and rotate him. So that is an area where Chelsea really need to look at. It is a massive issue, and it's partly why a lot of people are asking, let's change formation. We can't, because we do not have a six, another six with Jorginho. Now, of course, Jorginho played in the six role for Italy. Now, I do believe international football is slightly different from club football, especially Premier League club football in terms of tempo, etc. So that's something to also bear in mind. I don't think the tempo in England games is the same as Premier League tempo, so there's something to be said for that as well. But if you look at Jorginho at Napoli, at Chelsea under Sarri, he had Kante or Allen as the shuttle bus on the right side of midfield in the midfield three, helping him out defensively, covering ground. And of course, Jorginho does what he does in terms of his positioning, tackles and interceptions in close quarters, covering, the space around him and more using his head instead of his mobility. We don't have reliability in Kante. Hey, I spoke about it a year or so ago. I got slandered for it. Again, I didn't want to sell Kante. I just said Kante is not reliable fitness-wise. We have to look after him, which means we also need to think about replacing him, not letting him go per se, but having someone else in Kante's role who can do what Kante does, obviously to a lesser degree, because he is one of the best, if not the best in the world at what he does. But we need to have someone to replace his energy in the team and what he brings to the team, because he's injury prone and he has clocked up a lot of mileage, and therefore he's going to break down towards the latter stages of his career, which we're starting to see, and potentially only play him in the biggest games and the most difficult games, and rest him for those smaller games, and that's where you need your replacement. And he is injured at the moment, as you can see. It's a problem for us because we don't have someone that can be that shuttle bus, like I said. So the three-man midfield with Jorginho anchoring is not really an option there right now. I don't think Kova can do that role like Kante does. I don't think Loftus-Cheek defensively can do that role like Kante does. Mason Mount is an 8 who's been playing in the half 10. He's more of a guy that wants to connect the dots going forward as well. Gallagher is obviously not here. Potentially he's the only guy that could potentially do what Kante does to a lesser degree, obviously having the experience at West Brom playing in a 6, but that's neither here nor there because he's not here at the moment. So point being is we can't switch to a three-man midfield with our current options, and that's because we didn't secure the 6. Maybe a more mobile 6, a 6 that has the height, has the strength, and just brings a different profile. And again, I don't get this outcry on social media of Jorginho versus Rice. First of all, I think they complement each other very well. We've seen Rice this season play a more box-to-box role, and get forward and score goals. And Tchouemani, of course, is a player that can be box-to-box as well. Either of these two options would be good for Chelsea, and it would complement Jorginho, and it would also save Jorginho and give him more time and more rest and more recuperation and more recovery, instead of burning out, overplaying, and then being slaughtered for mistakes, when really, for me personally, he's been overplayed. And that will always creep into his game when fatigue, either mentally or physically or both, come into play. So Rice, Tchouemani, there's a reason why Tuchel wants these guys, or was reportedly wanted these guys, and Chelsea were scouting these guys, is because they're very good players. And at this point, I'm starting to care less and less about the price, and more about just the balance of the midfield and this team getting to the heights that it needs to get to, and it needs an extra person in that midfield with a different profile, with a different a different way of taking on games, and just to give us something else. And we haven't really replaced that Matic. Nemanja Matic is the kind of profile I'm talking about here, since he left for Manchester United. Someone that sits, anchors, obviously can create chances from deep as well, but more importantly, it's just giving you that other option defensively, and allows you to potentially switch that formation if you wish as well, at times in game, which is what a lot of you guys are asking for, to get more attackers onto the pitch. So that's a massive issue that we have to look at. Wing back, I've spoken about it already over the summer as well. Hakimi, obviously he didn't join. Maybe his wife led him astray. Our thoughts go out to him. Condolences for not joining the European champions over such a thing. But again, this is why Tuchel was looking at a wing back. And I know Reece James has been doing brilliant at right wing back. But again, he's also someone that's positionally versatile. He's played midfield for Wigan. Maybe it's something that you could have looked at there. But, some people have said even left wing back. The main reason why you can't move him right now is because the person that goes into right wing back is not as fluid, not as attacking in Aspie. And we will lose something on that side. And therefore, you don't make a cut on your left arm to patch up the cut on your right and swap the skin. You just don't do it. Both look absolutely tragic. And in that regard, that's what moving Reece James right now does. It weakens the right wing back spot, and you probably take something out of Reece James if you move him to left wing back, and just in terms of the lack of experience. But if you had signed an Hakimi, he would have been able to play on the left. If we had kept a Livramento, he also knows how to play on the left. And it means that you don't have to rely upon Marcos Alonso for the full season if there is an injury to Chilwell. Alonso is not that guy that you want to be relying on every 3-4 days for fixtures, Champions League, Premier League, Champions League, Premier League. Not only does he not have the speed or the energy to do it, but he's also just not consistent enough in his performance. So again, that wing-back position, if we had solved that situation and had a list potentially, there's other players that we've spoken about, Gosens and Guerrero at Dortmund, we need to look out in January. For me personally, I'm not looking at Ian Maatson to try and bring him in mid-season to, with no pre-season, to bring him up a whole division and into Champions League football and expect him to flourish. I know the academy boys are talented and he could very well prosper, but it is a risk, and I don't think it's a risk we should be taking if we're chasing the Premier League title and the Champions League. We should be going out there and buying experience, buying someone who's played at the top level. And if you have to spend 35 million, then I'm afraid that's what you have to do. It's what the old Chelsea would have done, and it's what Chelsea need to do, because we've been finishing 4th, 3rd for the last couple of years ever since Conte. If we want to make that next step to really win this title, which is probably going to take about 90 points, the way these two other teams are going, and we need to act in January and be serious. I'm not even going to continue to talk about the Saul and Gosens experiment. Of course, he'll probably play against Zenit, but it's very unlikely that he's ever going to be the left wing back that keeps out Gnabry in the Champions League semi-final anyway. So you still need to get a left wing back regardless. So that's another issue, is the wing back position. Okay, it's just another area where we didn't quite get anything for Tuchel in that department. And it kills a bit of flexibility, and now we're starting to pay the price a little bit. Now, of course, when injuries come back, Chelsea will be fine, I'm sure. When the strongest team is out there, we do usually perform. But in terms of depth, winter period that we continue to keep crashing on season upon season, these are the areas where Chelsea just didn't quite either get the best person they possibly could in Tchouemani over Saul, or they didn't get anyone in the wing-back position, which was obviously reportedly a Tuchel want and need. So that's where we are right now, and we need to sort that out in January. We've been putting up green spreadsheets now, net profits, selling Hazard, selling Morata, selling all of the young players over the summer, which allowed us to bring in Lukaku for 100 million and still have a green profit for the summer. But listen, profit, this is not Arsenal Football Club. We're not here to make profit, we're here to win trophies. So we need to just take our finger out our arse now, actually put some money on the table and actually spend, especially when we had a transfer ban a few seasons ago, and really go again now and rectify these two key areas for me. 6, so you can be more flexible, Tuchel, with your formation if you wish, but also just give rest to Jorginho, the wing back, so I don't have to see Alonso week in, week out. And of course, then we push from there. So people, I've said enough. Smash up the icons, and I'll chat to you, man, in a bit. In a bit, people. Peace.